Chapter 51, Stopping by Betty Jean's. It was Sunday, May 24th, 1959, the day before the election. Mother and I had spent all afternoon mimeographing a sample ballot. My arms were sore from turning the crank, and I had purple ink all over my hands, but we needed the copies. See, the election was a little confusing. We wanted people to vote against the recall of Lamb, Matson, and Tucker, because they were the moderate board members Stop wanted to keep, and for the recall of McKinley, Rowland, and Laster, because they were the ones we wanted to get rid of. If we could get rid of the segregationists, new school board members would be appointed. Since the school board determined the opening date for the schools, if we could get the governor's men off of it, the schools could reopen. Stop was going to hand out the ballots at the polls to make sure no one voted for the wrong person by accident. We were making some extra copies for Betty Jean and Pastor George, and were going to drop them off before dinner. The thought of going to Betty Jean's cheered me up. I'd never been to her house before, but I was pretty sure Liz would be there. She was as excited about the election as I was. I cranked out the last copies, washed my hands to try to get rid of the mimeograph ink. It didn't work, and Mother and I jumped into the car. Betty Jean's house was small and white, with neat flower beds in the front. It was only 2 blocks down from where we seen Red egging that house last Halloween. Mother parked on the curb and we went inside. Pastor George smiled real wide when he saw us. "Miss Nisbet?" he said. "Always a pleasure." Mother smiled. "And Marley," he said. "Any more secret messages?" I blushed. "No, only some sample ballots." "Thank you," he said as he took them from me. "Wouldn't want anyone accidentally voting for the wrong person." Betty Jean poked her head out of the door. "Marley, Liz and Curtis are in the living room if you'd like to say hello." I ran off before Mother could say we could go home and make dinner. Before Mother could say we had to go home and make dinner. Curtis was putting the finishing touches on a bunch of signs. Liz sat next to him. As I watched, he leaned over and put a drop of paint on her nose. She giggled. It sounded unlike Liz. She liked him. He liked her. And I was just the third wheel in the room. I was going to lose her, just like I lost Judy to that awful Robert Lawrence. I almost turned and went back outside, but then Mother appeared behind me and said, "Let me finally meet this famous Liz." When she said that, Liz looked up and a grin broke over her face. "Marley!" She ran to give me a hug. I felt bad for ever doubting her. "This is my mother," I said quietly. "Mother, this is my friend, Liz." Liz and Mother shook hands and looked each other over. Liz was almost as tall as Mother and looked her straight in the eye. Mother smiled and clasped Liz's hands in both of hers and said with a real warmth in her voice, "It's a pleasure to meet you." "You've got quite the daughter," Liz said. Mother laughed. "Don't I know?" Then Curtis stood up and walked towards us, and Liz said, "This is my friend, Curtis," and she blushed. Curtis glanced at me, and we both said, "We've met." We all laughed, and he shook Mother's hand. I remembered how Judy had come back, even if I lost her for a bit, and Liz seemed so happy, how could I be sad? I turned to look out the front window so no one could see the jumble of emotions on my face. That's when I saw the old gray Chrysler Windsor drive by. I blinked, and the car was gone. Had I imagined it? Mother was sitting on the couch, and Betty Jean had brought in sweet tea and oatmeal muffins. Liz was talking, and Mother and Curtis and Betty Jean were laughing at something she said, and everything seemed so normal. Just when I sure I imagined it, the car drove by again, very slowly, then turned the corner. I had to say something. I had to do something. But it was a common car, and it would be awfully embarrassing if I was wrong. On the other hand, what if Red had followed us here? Hurting Betty Jean would be the perfect way to get back at me. Maybe he knew Liz was there too. If it really was Red... The car drove past the house for a third time, and I could see a dent in the trunk. I jumped off the couch, causing Mother to spill her tea on her dress. "Marley, get out!" I yelled, pulling her off the couch. "Now!" "What is it?" asked Betty Jean. "Go!" I said. I guess they heard something in my voice because Liz grabbed Curtis' arm and Betty Jean pushed them both into the kitchen, where Pastor George was talking on the phone. "Outside," I said. I thought he was going to argue, but he took one look at my face and hung up the phone. A few seconds later, we were all huddled on the back stoop. We waited, frozen for a long moment. Nothing happened. "Marley," said Pastor George finally, and he only sounded the tiniest bit irritated. "Could you please tell me what's going on?" I saw Red's car drive by. Mother got a little paler, but she didn't move. Liz clutched Curtis's hand. I see, said Pastor George. Red is the boy with the dynamite, yes? I nodded. He has a gray Chrysler Windsor. I'll go look, he said. As soon as he was gone, the whole thing seemed ridiculous. Red really wasn't going to bomb anyone. Boys love to talk, Daddy always said. Nothing was going to happen. Certainly not to my friends. Lots of people owned a dark gray Chrysler Windsor. It was probably a neighbor, waiting to pick someone up, and driving around the block while he waited. I panicked like a fool. Had I ever even seen a dark gray Windsor? A lot of cars look similar. Pastor George came back. I don't see anyone there. Marley's been a bit on edge lately, said Mother finally. My face burned red, and I willed myself not to cry. Well, said Liz, letting go of Curtis's hand and winding her arm through mine. Better safe than sorry. Betty Jean opened the back door and held it open, gesturing for her husband to go inside. But then we suddenly heard a car pull up in front of the house. We all froze. There was a crash and a sound of breaking glass, a screech of wheels driving off, and then an explosion.